This is the President McCormack Podcast with your host, Mark McCormack.
Ladies and gentlemen of the podcast, welcome today, Skylar Bytendorp. Did I say it right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Great to be on here. Yeah.
I do this every now and again where I get real nervous about saying people's names wrong.
Yeah. Well, and mine's not an easy one to say, Bytendorp. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say Bentendorp or something like that when I first read it, but yeah.
Yeah, I've heard it all. People.
So is that like, are we German?
Yeah. German, Dutch. Yeah. Something in there. So I think it means, I was told it means like little village or like by the village, something like that. Oh, that's nice. So I don't know, just a little random meaning.
Have you done your Ancestry or 23andMe DNA stuff?
I haven't, no.
Oh, you got to do it, dude.
I've heard it's super cool. I want to do it, but it's cool. There's a lot of things that are cool to do out there. So I'm like, what do I actually do first? No,
the thing is interesting. So it's fun for some people, right? Because they're like, oh, I'm 3% black, I'm 4% Asian, or like, holy crap, I'm freaking, 60% French or something like that, right? I did mine, and mine was 98% British.
Wow.
And I was like,
98.
And like, I don't know what that was. So it was 0.5% Scandinavian, and then like, whatever, unknown or miscellaneous or whatever they call it, right? And I'm like, oh, my family pretty much lived on that island for quite a while. Right?
You're right.
that DNA locked in. Uh-huh. But the one thing with it that's kind of interesting is it changes, right? Mm-hmm. So if you do your DNA, that goes into the data pool and it actually changes the data that comes out of it, right? Because as they gather more and more data, right, it changes everyone's kind of thing, right? It just gets more and more specific, basically.
Okay.
And so it's kind of fun. Yeah, you just, I don't know what it costs, $200 or something like that, right? You spit in a little vial and you send it off to them, and 6 weeks later they spin your DNA up into a digital report, and you're in.
Uh-huh. I'll do that one day when I just have time and just a little bit of extra money to blow around, because I feel like once I get that information, like it'll be cool, and then I'll go on doing everything else I'm still doing. Like my life won't change too much. But it would be super cool to find out, though. Yeah, it'd be really cool. So
I'll tell you the fun stuff that people find out in the DNA tests, right?
Okay,
is paternity things. Right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Really so maybe it would. Yeah.
Like I have, I know some people, I shouldn't say who they are in my life, but they refuse to do it. Like it's like violation of their rights kind of thing. And I'm like, oh, you got some freaking paternity shit out there. that's like my one thing. At first I'm like, well, what's the big deal? I mean, they're going to get it from you. You know what I mean? Like
they probably already have it. Right.
Yeah, like, well, I mean, we're talking about the LDS Church for a minute. It's like they've been doing genealogy since the eons of time, basically, right? It's like that stuff's already, the data's already in there. They're just going to match it to you chemically, basically, right?
Right.
And so when people are just like hell bent on not doing it, I'm just like,
there's
you give a baby for an adoption, you're 17. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like something crazy like that, right? Uh-huh. And so, me personally, I found a cousin that lives in Arizona. So I had an uncle. He passed away when he was about 55, but he never had any kids to his knowledge. And he actually did have a kid.
Holy crap.
And the details of that is my cousin's mom. And I've never met her in real life. We've been pretty friendly on the app, And I've reached out. I'm like, hey, I might be coming into town or like whatever. And she hasn't really hit me back, and she's not really on social media. She's actually my age. So I'm 41. She's probably 39 or 40 now. And so we've never met, but she's my uncle's kid. And her mom, when they were teenagers, let's see what it had been, or maybe teenagers. She's like my age. She's pretty younger. She was just sleeping with more than one dude.
Yeah.
And so she thought it was this other guy, and the other guy wanted nothing to do with her. And this girl kind of had this like story of like, yeah, my dad and mom were teenage pregnancy, and he didn't want me, and he's kind of gone away. And I mean, in reality, it's a really sad story.
Right.
Because my uncle would have lived, he died of alcoholism essentially, right?
Okay.
And he partied his 20s away, he partied his 30s away. He was really sad and depressed in his 40s and got into the drinks, and because he never had a wife, he was never married, and he never had kids, and he always wanted kids, and he was the greatest uncle. He was awesome to us, and my brothers and my sister and all the other cousins. But when you get to your 40s and you're not married, and you start getting sad, you don't have the kids, and you're like, oh, my friends, they're going to like, varsity football games, and I'm still trying to party with 20-year-olds on Lake Tahoe.
Right.
And I look back on his life, and I'm like, crap, dude, if you would have known you had this this daughter, you would have lived different. Like he would have absolutely lived different.
Oh, yeah.
Probably still would have been here, you know? And she, when I was talking to her, you know, we were just messaging on the app and she's like, I said something. I'm like, hey, we're connected. And I'm like, at first I was like, and she's from Arizona, right? So my parents are from Scotland, or my dad's side's from Scotland. So they immigrated here. And so my dad never really lived in Arizona. And I was almost like, oh crap, what if this is like my dad's right kid? Or what if this is a sister, you know? And then I'm like, no, it's like 16 or 17% DNA match, right? So it makes it a first cousin, right? If I would have had a sister with somebody else, it would have been like a 48% match, right? Because it would have been half my dad, you know, with the margin of error. And so she's like, I don't know, it goes like a week or two goes by. She doesn't really respond. And, you know, I'm not like on it, like social media or anything. You kind of pop it out whenever you want. Yeah. And I get a message from her and she's just like, yeah, I talked to my mom. And she's like, yeah, absolutely could have been your uncle. I'm like, not could have been. It's my uncle. Right. Like, we're cousins. Like you match it like 17%. Like you actually are a heavy match because most of my cousins are like my biological ones that I know of that are my biological ones, obviously. But they're like 14, 15% matches and she's like 16.8 or something like that. That number changes too, kind of like I was saying, because the data changes it. And I kind of want to meet her. I'm actually going to Arizona next week. I'll have to see if she's wants to have a cup of coffee or something. But
yeah, that'd be cool.
But it's weird, bro. She looks like us. Like my family has a very distinct look from my dad's side, and yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting to kind of see where your family comes from, and nowadays with the data, it's insane. Right.
Yeah. Well, I think you convinced me. I'll probably do it sooner than later.
Yeah, you should.
Because that's really cool. Like, I mean, the people you can connect with just by knowing that stuff is, I don't know, it's cool to connect with family that you didn't know you had.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And you hit like a line and they'll pull you back into like, 13, 14, 1500s, it's like, oh yeah, you were a king. It's like, oh, what happened?
Right. Wait.
Yeah. No, I'm not. I'm stuck here. Yeah. So where'd you grow up?
I grew up in South Jordan, Utah. I was born and raised there. So that's,
which high school did you go
to? Bingham High School. I was actually homeschooled most of my life. And
Love
that. So I was homeschooled most of my life and I wanted to play hockey for Bingham. Okay. And a lot of my friends were playing on the ice hockey team there. Mm-hmm. And so I decided to join it, and I was going to the seminary there, and that would get me on the JV team, but not on the varsity team. So I had to actually attend classes at Bingham to get on that. And so that's when I started actually going to Bingham. So I still wasn't going there full time, but when people ask me, I say Bingham because it's a much shorter story than, I was homeschooled.
Yeah. So we homeschool our kids. We homeschool all three of our kids.
Nice.
And we love it. Why were you homeschooled?
I was homeschooled because my mom did not love she didn't love everything that was taught in public schools, but also she didn't necessarily agree with all the shots and medical things that had to happen for her to send her kids to the schools. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of it was more what was taught in schools and the environment, which I think is a good thing to not have us in there at certain ages. But I think at a certain time, like you need to either put them in somewhere where they're experiencing that stuff, because that is what is in the world. And I think that's probably a more controlled environment than a lot of other places. So I think you need we all just need exposure to that before we really enter the real world. The real world, like it's a fake one. It kind of is though, like high school high school is like not what reality is like. Everyone thinks they're on top of the world when they're in high school, and then they get out, turn 18, 20, 21, like, oh, I'm back to the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's why they had us homeschooled.
Oh, that's cool, man. So were you happy that you were homeschooled, or you wish you went to school?
A bit of both, right? I was happy that I was homeschooled because I feel like it gave me a different perspective on life, on how things were. Because I kind of saw all my friends like almost on this conveyor belt. Not that it's necessarily a bad thing, but it's just like the conveyor belt of go to school, then you graduate, go to college, or serve a mission. A lot of my friends served missions. Mm-hmm. I didn't, but it was graduate high school, serve a mission, come back, go to college, get married as fast as you can, and have kids, get a job. It was just like this conveyor belt that like most people all went off of, and not actually trying to do something on their own versus like what everyone was telling them to do. And again, nothing wrong with that necessarily, but I feel like being homeschooled, what I liked about it is it just gave me that different perspective of, because my dad was an entrepreneur. So I just saw like becoming your own boss and thinking outside of what everyone else thinks and being taught what everyone else thought. So I like that part about it. The only thing I didn't like was the social aspect, is like, I wasn't quite hanging out with as many, or like getting invited to as many parties when in my teens, or, you know, didn't like a lot of my friends when they were talking about their classes and what, their teachers were making them do and whatnot. And I couldn't really join in that conversation too much. So, you know, that was a little hard, but if I could go back, I don't think I would change anything. Right. I actually had a lot of good friends in my neighborhood that really connected me with a lot of other people. So even though I was homeschooled, I felt pretty connected to everyone, especially at Bingham too. Yeah. So.
Oh, that's nice. I mean, as being the parents, you know, we kind of worry about it, right? Mm-hmm. We have them in a lot of like different activities, and like they're in plays, and they go to like art classes and a science class. It's up in Salt Lake somewhere. And they have friends in the neighborhood and stuff like that. But like, the social side, it's like, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because it's like, there's a lot of people that go through high school and it's shitty.
Right. You know? Yeah.
Which, the funny thing with me, I like soared through high school. High school was dope for me. Right.
I had a blast too.
Yeah,
like,
tons of
for
friends,
everything I did.
Yeah. And my wife, you know, she went through high school pretty easy too. You know, I mean, I don't think she would say that, you know, it was hard on her. Like, I mean, there's hard parts, and she's a girl, right? It's harder to go through public school when you're a kid. Junior high, pretty happy for my kids to miss. Right. I'm just like, and even nowadays, man, like some of the curriculum, like not even the curriculum's fine. It's all the extra crap that they're exposed to. And, and I don't know, it's fun being homeschooled because how many hours a day did you do school when you were?
Yeah. So it wasn't necessarily how many hours we were doing school. It was, this is what you have to get done every day. Once you're done, that was it. Yeah. And, you know, I think public school's set up almost like, it's almost like a daycare. Like
it is a daycare.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So it's as many hours as the parents are usually at work. And so, I mean, I don't necessarily think most kids are meant to sit on their butt at that age for that long and like, you know, within four walls. So I really liked it because it was essentially, we just had to get like our reading done, our, you know, whatever age we're at, spelling and like all the grammar and math. And I think honestly, the more important things done. And then once we were done with all that, you know, we were done. So I don't know, 3-4 hours a day. It would depend though, you know.
That's almost exactly what we're doing.
Okay.
So when I say we, I don't do any of it. It's my wife.
Right.
She got to do fun stuff like this, like podcasts and go to work and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think at the start she was doing like 5 hours, like almost trying to replace school. And to be fair, like our kids went to public school, and then when COVID hit, they came home, and we like homeschooled them for like 2 months, 3 months, whatever. Yeah, that craziness was. And then my wife in the summer was like, "Hey, I'd like to just homeschool them." Wow. I was like, "All right," you know. So what do you think? And I'm like, as long as you can handle it, yeah, you know. And even to this moment, right? So it's been a couple of years now. It's like if she comes to me tomorrow and she's like, "I can't handle it anymore," it's like, enroll them. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like that's fine. Like just be fluid with it. You know, we don't have like some. You know, we're not tromping through the forest trying to like blaze a path for anybody, you know, It's just like, we're just going to do the best. But my kids have really flourished being at home. Their reading levels are all way high. Their comprehension's way high. And I look at it and I'm like, this is the best way to do this. And I know that like that offends some people out there, right? Because they can't, or they think that they can't, or they make a million excuses why they can't. And some people really can't, right? Both parents work. This is really the best option for them. That's great. That's the best option for you. I'm not knocking on your lifestyle, right? But if you can actually homeschool your kids, right? Because you're around them a lot more, right? Those years are gone once they're gone, right? You know, and you can really focus in on exactly what they learn. So we have 3 kids. And so my wife, like even when she feels like that she's had a bad day with them, right? Like it's not all freaking rainbows and unicorns, right?
Right. No, it's not.
And I'm like, babe, even if you had a bad day with them, our son goes to school for 7 hours. He's in a class of 35 to 40 kids. If he gets 20 minutes of one-on-one with that teacher in a day, that's as high as it can possibly be.
Right. That's almost like unheard of.
Yeah. You know, it's probably closer to 6-7 minutes a day. Right. Right. Or if at all. Mm-hmm. Right. Because if you're a kid that if you're an average kid, you just kind of get your work done in school, the teacher never interacts with you. Mm-hmm. There's no need to. And at home, it's like you're interacting with all of them for well over an hour. And most of the time, even if you're interacting with 2 or 3 at a time, it's still direct. Yeah. You know, it's not like, you're not focusing on their needs. You can focus in on more than one kid's need at that moment. So if you do 3 hours of school, condense it, make it efficient, and then let's go throw them in a bunch of extracurriculars, you know, or let them play, or let them draw, or let them, you know,
let them be kids.
Yeah. Every now and again we do some video games, you know,
right.
But as long as they're not abusing that crap. But yeah, I mean, my oldest daughter, she's 13. She'll turn 14 this year, and she loves making movies. So we just let her go crazy, make movies, you know.
Nice.
And so she gets on, you know,
like YouTube stuff.
She wants to make a YouTube channel. So I've been letting her kind of like, she has an iPhone, but it's not connected to a phone number. It's just connected to Wi-Fi, right? So it's just like email. Yeah. So she can text me and text her mom, but she takes videos and she edits them on there. Sometimes she go to the computer and edit them. And so, you know, so I'm getting like 30-second to 3-minute long videos almost every day of like her and her brother and sister acting stuff out. And like when the cousins come over, it's nothing but movies, you know what I mean? And they like to show them to us, you know, we cast them up on the TV or down in the theater room and watch them. And they have 2 hamsters. I finally relented and got them a pet. So they have 2 hamsters. So they always do these hamster videos. But like her dream is to do like a YouTube channel. And so we're working on that right now where I'm like, okay, well, this is different now. So you got to come up with like a plan and like, not just random crap on here. Like what's the plan of your YouTube channel? What do you want to show? And that practical learning is so much fun.
Right.
Right. They just get to learn so much stuff.
See, and that's the cool part. Cause if she was in school, she would never have the opportunity to actually like follow that passion and to be able to learn how to make the movies, how to get on YouTube, how to do all that stuff. And just, you know, and like your day's kind of planned for you every single day for the 6-9 months, however long they're in school, basically every day. So that's the cool part is there's that free time to be creative and to learn what you're passionate about and to actually spend time doing it, see if it's something maybe you want to go into one day and learn more about. So I think that's awesome. That's really cool to hear.
Yeah, there's no little butthead kid tell her she's ugly or anything, you know?
Right. Yeah. Or the boys like hitting on her all the time.
Actually, the boys are nice, pretty much. It's the freaking girls, dude. Like our neighbors, we hear these like horror stories. You know, there's like 13-year-olds on Snapchat, like just
social media,
saying the craziest things, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not upset she's missing all this.
Right.
And there's an innocent level. There's an innocence level with my kids. Because they're not exposed to some things, right? Like bullying, right? Like they're never bullied. It just never happens, right? Because their mom's pretty cool, and I don't really want to bully.
Right.
You know, but it's like, and I'm kind of like, yeah, when you get to high school, we'll probably integrate you a little bit into high school. But actually, the University of Utah does this thing. They do concurrent enrollment, but it's not through the high school; it's through them.
Yeah.
So, and it's only $5 a credit.
Wow.
And the first 2 years are online. And so we're really considering that. So now we're about 2 years away from doing that with our oldest daughter. And I'm like, yeah, I don't see any reason not to do this. Worst case scenario, she gets an associate's or an applied associate's by the time she's done.
Right.
And I don't really plan on my kids going to college anyways. I think college is a little bit of a waste of money. You know,
yeah.
Jump into that if you want.
Yeah, no, I agree. I haven't gone to college. Unless you're going to be a doctor, like psychiatrist or an engineer, something like that, really like, there's not a big need for it anymore. Like you can learn almost any skill on Google. There's the plans on how to make like a spaceship on Google.
Really?
Yeah. Like on NASA's website, you can go and I haven't actually looked at it, but I've heard everybody say like there are plans, blueprints on how to do that. And you can learn anything on YouTube. And so many things are based off experience now and have to do with the internet and all that. You don't need college anymore. I think it's like 80% of people that actually go to college, get a degree within a couple of years are in a job, in a career that has nothing to do with their degree.
I think it's like 95%.
Yeah. It's
super high.
It's stupid high.
Even attorneys. Mm-hmm. So an attorney, right, you would put in the category of you have to go to college, right? So you can get your 4-year degree, then go to law school, then pass the bar, right?
Right.
There's a lot of attorneys that don't practice law.
Yeah.
That's an expensive way to not, you know.
Yeah, imagine putting that money in starting your own business or in putting it in, I don't know, an investment or something that where, you know, by the time you want to retire or done working, you have millions of dollars, right?
Well, in our country, you know, to get real philosophical, I think there's like $1.7 trillion in student loan debt. $1 trillion of that is from women. And a lot of those women are not even in the workforce.
Wow.
And so it's like, that's a lot of crippling slavery for people to owe that much money.
Yeah. Well, it's because they want you to be in debt because when you're in debt, you're a slave to your debtor.
Yeah.
And it's all, I don't know, we can go as far as we want into whatever we want, but I think it's all kind of part of the system they want you to stay in. Or, you know, because like if a kid, an 18-year-old applies to go to college and wants a loan to go to college, they can get, you know, $100,000 to go to college. They're $100,000 in debt now. But if they want to apply for like a business loan, that for a business they're starting, 10 grand, slim to like zero chance they're actually going to be able to get that.
Yeah.
And I think that is very messed up to, I don't know. I think we should believe more in kids and like teach them more how to be like free thinkers and how to actually like create something instead of just follow the leader, essentially.
Well, I totally agree. But I think that's going back to the problem with public school, right? Public school is daycare.
Yeah.
I mean, you can drop your kid off. I can't remember exact time, but I think you can drop your kid off like 5:30 in the morning. And then
holy crap,
they have breakfast there, which is, you know, and there's people that need those programs. That's fine. Right. And then you don't even have to pick your kid up till like 5:30 or 6 o'clock at night because there's the after school programs. Right. And it literally is, it's daycare.
It's daycare.
Right? And that's not taken away from the teachers, you know, before people want to go ballistic on that, making that comment, but you just can't knock the truth. That's why it's that long. You know, I don't even know an adult that can sit there for 7 hours
and
retain the information that they should be getting in 7 hours.
Right.
I think most people it's about 6 to 7 minutes of like retaining things, right? Then you kind of need a break and then you can go back to it. You know, there's all these things that are set up, right? And I think part of the reason we don't trust kids is because public school doesn't teach them any marketable skills,
right?
Especially up until college, right? It's like, what high school kid can file a tax return?
Yeah. They're not allowed to talk about money in high school.
And if you can't file a tax return, it means you can't read a P&L, which means you don't even know what a balance sheet is or a cash flow, analysis. And so it's like, if you don't understand how the money works inside of a business, how are you supposed to build a business? Right. And then if you don't understand why marketing dollars give you a return on investment based off your cash, it goes back to your accounting document, you know, all that stuff just goes back. And it's like, what'd they learn? Biology, they could name some bones, maybe a little bit of chemistry. We're going to get them through algebra 2, which is worthless.
Right.
You know, I mean, 99% of the population doesn't use algebra.
Right.
And then people would be, oh, well, what about engineers and architects? It's like they have computer programs that do it all.
Right.
I'm
exactly.
All day.
Well, and most people, even the people that know that math extremely well, they still ask Siri, hey, what's this times this divided by that, you know, to the power of, you know, like it's becoming so like traditional school and college is becoming so obsolete because we carry these supercomputers in our pocket that have access to every book ever written. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean.
Well, in college and universities, they're there to make money. They're all for profit.
Yeah. And a lot of them have like, I don't think a lot, and I don't know this for fact, but I'm pretty sure a lot of them like don't really have to pay much tax, if any at all. Like so much of it is just pocketed.
Pay nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they get all grants from the government anyways.
Right.
I mean, it's just all. Yeah, I mean, it's just a big racket, right?
Yeah.
And that's why they keep on adding degrees.
Exactly.
You know, why is there 27 different versions of a business degree?
Yeah.
You know, and one thing, so my brother owns a marketing company. He's one of my first guests that I brought on. And we owned a company together for a while. And we used to joke because people would get a online marketing degree from a college or a university, right? And I can't tell you how absolutely worthless that degree is because of how universities have to bring in the program, right?
Yeah.
You have to build the program. Then it has to be approved by the university, which is like a 2-year process, right? So let's just say you're a wizard and you build that thing in like 6 months, right? An entire degree, right? Based on social media or social marketing, right? Then it takes 2 years for that to be implemented, right? And then you put that as a bachelor's degree, which means the kids that are going to get into that program are then 2 more years in their undergraduate and then hitting into that degree. And a lot of kids take 3-4 years now to get their bachelor's degree, right? Or 2 to 4 years, I would say. A lot of kids, I think the average is like 5.5 years to graduate with a 4-year degree now, right? So you don't hear the words 4-year degree anymore. They just say bachelor's degree. And it's like, by the time that program was built and they've graduated on the fastest track It's like 5 years.
Yeah.
On the longest track, it could be 8 or 9. And then that program, they don't want to redo it every year, obviously, right? So then that program is going to sit there for probably 4 to 6 years as a program. So if you catch it on the back end of it, dude, that thing is 8, 9 years long. Mm-hmm. So by that time, dude, the whole world has changed.
Yeah.
Social media, I mean, think about it, right? Like if you didn't even know what TikTok was and you're in an online marketing class, you have no idea what TikTok is because TikTok was released 6 months ago. Then you have this degree and people are like, okay, I need you to do TikTok. It's like, well, I've never learned TikTok. And it's like, what did you learn in your degree? Well, like Google AdWords. It's like, what?
Right.
I mean, we were doing that 5 years ago and and these kids are paying $85,000 for this degree. And it's like, and back to your point, watch YouTube.
Yeah.
You know,
you can learn most any skill off of YouTube. And like, I want to be clear. I'm not knocking education. I'm just knocking the way, like how college is done. Cause I think everyone should get an education, but not necessarily in the traditional sense. Like you don't need to pay $80,000 to learn how to do social media marketing. You can learn it all on YouTube and all you have to do
like a week.
Yeah. Right. And all you have to do is apply what you learn, produce results for yourself or somebody, and then you will be paid way more money than you'd ever get paid from getting your degree and going and getting your job.
Well, and what you said is spot on. It's about being educated.
Yeah.
It's not about getting degrees.
Because you do have to have skills. You do need to know how to have a marketable skill, but it doesn't need to be necessarily the traditional way that everyone does it. Because most people don't use it.
Just go learn it and then go do it.
Yeah.
Learn it and do it. Learn it and do it. That's why, like, well, my wife and I, we talk all the time with our kids. It's like, we're going to teach them how to learn. That's the most important thing we can teach them, right?
Yeah.
So when they're 25 and they're just like, here's an industry that I think is going to get big. I want to get into that industry. How do I do it? We'll go figure it out. You know, and when they can just go figure it out, they don't need to get a college degree or they don't need it. And it's almost the college degree thing too. Just go off on this wild tangent. I just, in my last podcast, and I'll say it again, I hate books. People are like, what? You know, like that sounds crazy. But my problem with books is 15 to 20% of that book is actually relevant, good information. The rest of it's filler, you know, all killer, no filler, right? It's just like they're telling stories because they have to justify selling this book to you. So they got to get this thing to 160 to 260 pages, right? Mm-hmm. Where really 40 or 30, 40, 50 pages of this thing is all it needed to be, right? And a lot of books are written by a doctor who was taught by someone. There's not a lot of like, when I say doctor, more normally it's a PhD level student, right? And those books are written for their dissertations or slightly after or slightly before. And all that is being regurgitated crap that's stuck in the universities. There's no practical information or practical application that has been done and then brought back into the book, right?
Yeah.
A lot of researchers write books. And when you really start breaking this down, in fact, I think if you look through the books you like the most, it's just real people and their real life experience, you know? They were educated on the street or whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
Like David Goggins is a good example, right? Like his book is super interesting to most people that read it, right? It's very, New York Times bestseller, very well received, but he's not a doctor. He doesn't have this like theory behind what he wrote. And the reason why you like it is because it's just lived experience. Yeah. That he, wrote a ton of F words and slapped it into a book, right? Because he talks, which is kind of fun, right?
Yeah.
But like at the end of the day, man, I read all these books and I'm just like, man, what value is this bringing me? And if people can be concise and condense things down and just learn things quickly and keep on moving, right? Like you get through things so much faster and so much quicker. And I just feel like college is just such a freaking waste of time and money. And you're 25 years old, you're strapped with, $80,000 to $150,000 worth of debt. Then you go into the workforce and you didn't really learn a skill, How
are you going to pay that off?
Yeah. You get these entry-level jobs where you're being trained to do something, You've been a lot better for 5 or 6 years just going and like taking an internship every 6 months and just learning something, Yeah. Go work for a stockbroker, go work for a bank, go work for a social media marketing company, go work for a grocery store, go work for a subcontractor. Like really, if you were really good at it, if there was programs that existed, you could do it in 3 months, each one of them, right?
Right.
And so over 2 years, you have had 8 trades that you would be exposed to on a really, really good level, right? And then if you went and learned a little like go get accounting for dummies, managerial accounting and normal accounting, and you're golden, right? Then you're pretty much like, because when you go to an interview, right? So I interview a lot of people.
Yeah.
If anyone ever came into me and just said, hey, I know what your company does. I know how you guys make money. This is the way that I can affect your business. And I don't know your margins, but if, you teach me this kind of stuff, I think I can affect your business at, another $200,000-$300,000 a year profit, and I want $125,000 of that. All right.
Yeah.
Deal. Dude, you're getting that job 99 times out of 100 because the person on the other side is like, this dude gets it. It's not a crapshoot. It's not like I'm reading this resume and you've worked 5,000 different places. And why'd you leave your last job? Well, I was misunderstood. Like, oh, oops, I don't want this dude working here. You know what I'm saying? It's like, there's just craziness that happens instead of being like, I know you sell widgets and I know these widgets sell to this market. And, there's different avenues you guys can do. Once I learn over the next 6 weeks, I can really be effective in selling these widgets out into this world. Right. Or whatever your skill is inside that thing.
Yeah. I mean, because that's the thing is like, you don't even need like necessarily a skill that you go in, like market yourself to other businesses. You can literally start a TikTok account, just all the social media accounts. Yeah. You can go onto Amazon, apply to be an affiliate.
Yeah.
And then as long as you have people's attention money follows attention. Mm-hmm. And so if you have attention, your people are following you on social media. All you have to do is post something cool, get people's attention, get that link that will direct people to a product to buy. And people make hundreds of thousands of dollars a month doing that. Yeah. And that's something you can learn off of YouTube. And, and I'm one to talk, right? I haven't done that, but I've looked into it a lot and I probably will start doing that just like on the side, like slowly build up a social media account because if you have people's attention, all you got to do is learn how to create a following on social media.
Yeah.
And once you have a following, once people are seeing what you have, you can sell almost anything to them.
Well, yeah. And people will go like, well, social media influencers, right? And then those come with good connotations and bad connotations.
Right.
And it's like, it's all about influence. The word influence is very honest.
Yeah.
Right? They can influence their audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you're working, so for me, if someone's working at my subcontracting company, right? And because of the brand and the history of the business and the products that we sell, if you call the general contractor up and influence them to buy our product, that is all doing a sell is. You're influencing them to buy from you. Mm-hmm. They just do it in a much mass scale, right?
Right.
And different product lines. But if you raise yourself in society as an influencer, then you can sell anything you want to anybody. Exactly. Instead of just working for a company being very narrow in what you do. But people just don't close that loop, I guess.
Yeah.
And they think, well, I do software sales. And it's like, yeah, you influence people to buy your software. Like, yeah, you might have a script you work off of, or you might have perks or whatever, but hey, I'm going to give you, $1,500 off of this. Oh, great. Yeah. That's going to make me want to do it. Like, you just influence them to buy. Like, that's closing the loop. That's the whole thing.
Right. And you don't even necessarily I think social media is going to be your most powerful marketing tool no matter what you do. But I only think you don't even necessarily need social media even. You can go to if you don't have a job, you can go to 5 business owners, 10 business owners and say, hey, if I bring you paying clients, will you pay me?
Exactly.
Every single one of them is going to say yes. And as long as you can do that, whatever it takes, whether that's putting those little posters that you put out in people's grass yard or posting stuff on social media or just going and talking to people at events. If you can bring them paying clients, they will pay you money. And now I just gave everybody on here a job, right? So, I mean, there's so many ways to make money. It's absolutely ridiculous. And it's even more ridiculous to be going to college to learn something that you probably aren't crazy passionate about. Because I think if you are truly passionate about something and college is the way to do it, great, do it. But it's ridiculous to go spend that much money when there's so many ways you can start making money now today, not in 4 or 5, 6 years. Might as well just start now instead of paying all this money to learn something that's free.
Well, and I have a 4-year degree.
Yeah.
And, I'm more of an entrepreneur now than anything. Right.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, if I could go back in my 20s and work instead of, and I worked full time during college, but if I was as focused as I was in my 30s and I did that in my early 20s, dude, the more money is just it's hard to explain, right? Because time equals money, right?
Right.
So if I was making an extra 80 grand a year for 4 years and I was investing that money into some mutual funds or some index funds or something like that and just like brainless stuff, right? Just throwing it in there, dude, over 25 years, that money grows into like millions and millions of dollars. Mm-hmm. And what people don't really understand is by the time they learn those skills and they learn how to be marketable, they're in their 30s now because college takes forever.
Right.
Most people used to graduate college at like 22 years old. Most people now, I think they graduate like 27.
Wow.
You know, I don't know the exact statistic on that, but it's
definitely older. Yeah. I have
it's way older.
I know a lot of people who are still at college or still haven't gone, but know they are going to have to or want to.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're in their 30s and they're like, I still don't know what I want to do with my life. And that's the thing is like a lot of people don't know what they want to do with their life until they are in their 30s, you know? Yeah. And so, but then they already spent so much money on this college degree. They're already 80 grand into it. So, you know, even if it's half that, even if it's only 40 grand, you're still 40 grand into a degree. Yeah. You're not even sure if you want to do it. And I think that's another problem is and that's a beautiful thing about homeschooling your kids versus going to public school is they have time to develop their skills and to be able to, you know, learn about themselves and what they like to do. That way, if they did decide to go to college, they're actually doing it with years of experience in their interest, knowing this is something that they are actually interested in, not just kind of hoping it will. Because a lot of times it's a hope. Because how much time have someone has asked? A lot of times, how much time has someone actually spent doing the marketing or being a lawyer or being a doctor? They've spent most of the time 0 hours doing it, and they're going into this just a lot of times with the hope.
Yeah,
that's kind of all it is.
Yeah. No, there's definitely stories you hear of like people going to law school, right? Because law school and being an attorney, not the same thing, not even close. Right. And they become an attorney. They're like, I freaking hate this. Mm-hmm. Like, you just review documents all day. Like you're a transactional attorney, you know? And so they end up quitting and going into something totally else. There's medical doctors that end up hating it. You know, there's a lot of, I don't think it's a massive percent, but there's definitely a percent of people that get into like 2 or 3 years of medical school. And they're like, I hate this. I don't want to do this. I like the hours. I don't like the whatever about it's hard. And they end up dropping out, you know? And honestly, with me, I'm like, I don't know if that was the good decision or not. You know, I mean, you burned a bunch of debt with no degree, but then you're also like, but you might've saved yourself 10 years. Right. So, you know, I guess it depends on what you do from there.
Well, and I think a much better place to put your money is in coaches, mentors. Yeah. If there's something you are interested in, it's a lot cheaper to go pay a coach or a mentor on how to be successful on a specific business than to go to college and pay someone to teach how to do something they aren't even doing. Yeah. So I think a lot of like the big key is finding people who have already done what you're doing. And first just ask if they'll help you. But most people are willing to coach you. So I think that's the place you need to go first is go find coaches.
Yeah. Yeah. Coaches and mentors. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. So let me ask you this. So you have your own podcast.
Yes.
How long have you been podcasting for?
I've been podcasting for a year and a half, almost, I think close to 2 years now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, so my first podcast was with my friend. So I knew I wanted to start a podcast. So I bought all the equipment and just never got started because I was like, not totally sure how to do, it's doing something for the first time. And this all goes back to like self-educating yourself on how to do things. But eventually I met a friend who also wanted to start a podcast. So we're like, you know what, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So we decided to go together and start a podcast. And so we did that for I think we did 18 episodes weekly. And so, for a few months, and then, he wanted to go get in the police academy and do other things. So I was like, okay, go do your thing. I'm going to continue on with podcasting. So I started my own podcast. It's called Growth Point Podcast. And I'm probably going to kind of change the whole dynamic of it. And we'll change the name and stuff too, because I want to interview more business owners and I want to help people get from that 0 to 10 grand in business and help them with the personal development that comes in with doing that. But that's what the whole podcast is about. It's about personal development, becoming the best version of yourself. Because once you're the best version of yourself, which we're never going to reach the very best, but it's always becoming like that 1% better every day. Right. But when you start applying personal development and becoming that better version of yourself, that's when you can actually have like the better relationships. You can be better in business. You can do so much more when you're actually confident in yourself. And I think that's what it really boils down to, is having more confidence in yourself. to be able to do these things you want to do. So anyway, long answer, but that's what the podcast is about. It's about
I love it,
personal growth and development.
So, what do you think about being a podcaster?
I think it's a lot of fun. I think I've always loved having deep and interesting conversations with people. And I think that's something that lacks in your everyday conversation with everybody. You know, you go to a family dinner with someone that's, oh, how you doing? How's this? How's that? Like there's not too much depth to it, but every conversation I've had on a podcast, whether it's my own with guests or being a guest on someone else's, there's a lot of depth to the conversations. And I think that's something we're kind of starved of in society today. So that's what I really like about it, is it really brings out the deep stuff that is valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a new form of media, right? Like you can get so much information out into people, but it also gives you like a fly on the wall look into so many different conversations.
Exactly.
And so when I started this podcast, it was actually going to be like, I'm in the business category, right?
Right.
And I was going to talk a lot more business on here. And then the more, just with each guest, I just kind of free flow it, right? We just kind of go where it's going to go, and we talk about what we're going to talk about. And it's interesting to see the conversations I've ended up having with people, and like the way that my audience has reacted to it. And like my wife almost every day goes, well, how are the podcasts today? And I'm like, good, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, and she's like, you think they'll do well? And I'm like, no idea. Like, you really don't. I mean, some do really, really well, and some, you know, just kind of do the normal numbers or whatever. Right. Right. And I think it just depends on what is hitting people on that day, which I think is why Joe Rogan's podcast is so wildly successful, because there's no agenda. It's just, you're listening to a conversation and he brings interesting people on, and you kind of look at this thing over time, and it's like, yeah, I want to feel normal with people. And I want to like not always see the social media side of everybody, or like the way the media portrays them. And, you know, it's kind of nice. Like, you know, Shaquille O'Neal, right? The big basketball player.
Oh man, I don't follow sports actually.
You don't know who Shaquille O'Neal is?
I don't know who that is. No.
That is wild.
I know who Joe Rogan is.
Good. Yeah. Okay, so man, I don't even know how to explain Shaquille O'Neal, dude. He's massive. He's like 7'4". Okay.
I've probably seen him.
Bryant. Oh, I know you've seen him.
Yeah.
Well, have you ever seen Papa John's commercial with the big black basketball player? So
okay.
That's him.
Yes. Okay. I know who that
50s,
is. Yeah.
Right? Big dude. Shaq.
Of course.
Shaq. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So Shaquille O'Neal. Yeah. No, that's funny, man. It's cool too, you know. Yeah. I mean, it's good that you don't know every freaking pop person in the world. You know, I'm starting to fade on some of that too. But he's a guy, and he's made a lot of money, right? He was probably the most dominant basketball player of all time, arguably. So no one lights me up on Twitter, but
right. I'm about to be lit up on Twitter for not knowing that
this
name.
Kid doesn't know, but he's very likable. He's really fun, and he just has this bigger than life personality, right? But one of the things that people like about him is they'll say he's real, right? People use that as kind of a buzzword, right? And I think it's because if you ever talk to him, like he feels normal, but he's not. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. He's a 7'4" ultimate athlete, uber wealthy, will probably be a billionaire before he dies. I mean, he's done well. He's a great investor. He's good to people. People love him. He's always doing charitable acts because he loves it. He DJs EDM music, and like he just lives life, loves life, right? His kids are now kind of in college age, and you know, he's got funny sound bites, and he's so TNT is like the big games each week, you know, the channel TNT. Yeah. He's one of the announcers for that. So him and Charles Barkley, if you probably know who Charles Barkley is. No. I'll send you some clips.
I like to play sports, but I don't follow them too much.
Yeah. They're just two funny personalities, right? That's the big deal. Right?
And that's the fun part about podcasting, is when you have those personalities that come together.
So, yeah, exactly. And so, and I like that the podcast just like humanizes people really quickly. Mm-hmm. Right? You can, I mean, some people posture on them, right? Like, and those are boring. I always skip past those, but like, it's just kind of fun to see like the real side of people. Yep. And one thing I've learned with like very wealthy people, because a lot of people think, well, I want to be wealthy, so I'm going to go find a wealthy guy and I'm going to try and figure out how he did it, right? Yeah. And it's like, you're kind of right. You need to figure out who the person is, you know? And once you find out who the person is, and that will kind of lead you to more of like well, why'd they do this and why they decide to do this and what risks did they take and how did that really work out? Mm-hmm. There's a buzzword that I just want to punch people in the face over, right? And it's use other people's money, right?
Oh, yeah. And
then everyone goes, yeah, other people's money, right? And then they're like, oh, yeah. And then they go try and raise money and no one will give them $1 because their idea is stupid, right? Yeah. And it's like, yeah, I know everyone says that and it's a hot clip on Instagram and TikTok and whatever, right? But really at the end of the day, when you ask somebody, when you started your business, where'd you get your capital from? My grandfather mortgaged his house, gave me $16,000. I knew for a damn fact I couldn't lose it, right? That moment is actually honest. Saying, I use other people's money and now I'm super wealthy and I drive a Lamborghini and I'm a douchebag. Right. Like that's not real. That's not the truth. That's not really what's going on. Right. It's the, no, I did this. And then, well, I worked for this company for 15 years and I ended up having $80,000 or $200,000 of equity in my home. And I'm like, I knew I could do this. And I just had a passion with selling belt buckles or whatever. Right. And so I started on the side and I kind of dipped into it. Then I just had this moment one day where I was like, go all in, man. Like, you only live once. Like, let's freaking do this, man. I know this can sell, right? And then you mortgage your house and you go, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of those stories too are, well, this is actually my 15th idea. The first 14th, some were good, some were terrible. I buried some of them. I lost this money. Like, it's a messy road to success generally, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think listening to clips of Gary Vee or Grant Cardone or like all these guys that just, you can't escape, right? They pay everywhere. For so much social media advertising. They're just always in your face, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, you just don't get the real struggle or like the real like decision making that happened to get to them to that point, because your life will be so much better off if you go, it's like, hey, Skylar, these are the 5 things I did that were stupid. Here's the 10 things I did that were really good. Avoid these ones. Try and do as many of these. And that will make the time to your success quicker. Might be 20% quicker, might be 80% quicker. But if you like pay your taxes, right? Like, how many people I know have made money and then don't pay taxes. Then the IRS comes and like destroys them. They're like, yeah, they're all mad at me. And it's just like, yeah, you're like, building this system as the system's like taking off and you're doing really, really well and you're not paying your taxes, and they come and strip all the cash out of your business, instead of like doing it the right way.
Right.
And so that's why I like podcasting. I think you get certain personalities on here and you can kind of hear like people who listen to this podcast, right? Mm-hmm. There might be 5 to 10 minutes of this whole thing where they're just like, oh, that was really good. Like, I like that part resonated with me today. And hopefully that pushes people and influences them to kind of move in that direction a little bit more, right? And I think that's why you end up getting like the Rogan podcast, right?
Yeah.
He's my favorite podcaster of all time, right? Like most people. But I only listen to the episodes that are interesting to me and the ones that I want to engage with, right? And the ones I want to engage with is because I'm gleaning something off of each one of those things. Either like when Elon Musk is on there, I actually feel a little bit smarter. Yeah. Like, that dude's so smart. And the way he explains things, I'm like, oh, I didn't really, he finished a loop for me, right? He connected that. I'm like, oh, that makes a lot more sense. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I love listening to him speak. Plus he's super interesting. He's the richest man in the world, I think, or one of them now.
Yeah.
At one point he was definitely the richest man in the world. And It's like, dude, he's the CEO of like 5 different billion-dollar companies. Like, that has never happened and will never happen again.
Right.
But it's interesting, right? And that's why the podcasting thing is just like, oh yeah, you can, when you find a certain vein with guys, you can really dive into like what content that they're putting out there. And the content, you just need to add value to people's lives.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't complicate it.
And I think the coolest thing about podcasting is it's so easy to consume. Like, you can turn your car into a mobile classroom just by turning on a podcast. Most people will either do nothing, which I think is also helpful too, to be in your own thoughts and to think about stuff. But I like doing that after listening to a podcast and thinking about what I just heard, what I just learned. But you can learn so much just from podcasting. Like, anything you want to learn about, I mean, it's just like the internet, right? Or like YouTube, there's a podcast specifically on any subject you could think of. There are, I think, there's a couple million podcasts out there. And so like, you can literally find one on anything you want. Yeah. And it's funny, we're talking about podcasting and education because I didn't go to college, but I am currently almost finished with a podcast course that I paid for, because it's not through the college, it's not through that, but it's so specific on how to grow a podcast, monetize your podcast, and just have a successful show. Mm-hmm. And that's one that I was like, okay, this makes sense to pay, it was a few $1,000s, but I was like, this makes sense because it's actually, here's where you're starting. Here's the result. It's not pressured by society or anyone else. It's like, this is what I want to do. I want to build my own and I want to help other people do theirs. And so that's when it was actually like made sense to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, podcasting is, I think, you hit on so many good points there, but it's so intimate. It's like people are in the room. I think those are the best podcasts is when it feels like you're in the same room.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I don't listen to Joe Rogan's too much, but yeah, when it's like the last one I listened to was, oh crap. Who's the guy? The doctor, was
it Huberman?
Jordan Peterson.
Oh, Jordan Peterson.
Yeah. That was the last one I listened to.
Yeah.
Cause Jordan Peterson is just wicked smart. And half the time I don't even know what he's saying, but my vocabulary grows a lot when I listen to him. Cause like every 5 seconds, I swear I'm pausing it and then asking Siri, like, what does this word mean?
Yeah.
Cause he just talks so smart, but it's like, have you heard the thing where people say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time around?
Oh yeah.
And everyone wants to be around the billionaires, the millionaires, so they can become that. Well, that's not really going to happen based on where they're at, living in their mom's basement and, maybe just started a business or not. They can't really do that. But what you can do is you can listen to their podcast. You can follow them on social media. And by that way, you're still absorbing their mindset, what they think, what they say. And that's a way to get around them. Because, the difference between podcasting and why it's so unique versus YouTube, social media, is podcasting is like this hour long, could be, shorter, longer. But you're being able to absorb so much information from this one person, while you're driving, that you can actually sit down and spend like an hour with this person that you probably won't be able to meet for a while until you gain some level of success. But it's a way you can become like those people without having to actually meet them or live next to them or have them in your inner circle.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's a great point.
Yeah.
I've never thought of it that way. And like, as you're saying that, I'm like nodding my head in like total agreement. It's like, yeah, if you want to be like, who Huberman is?
Huberman. I can't match the name to the face.
He's a doctor. He's got a really big podcast. I think it's Andrew Huberman. I can't really remember, but let's just say Joe Rogan, right? So you want to be a comedian, right? And you're like, I want to be a comedian that has an influence, right? It's like, yeah, you can listen to Joe Rogan an hour a day. Right. Or 3 hours a day. His freaking podcasts are forever. And it's like, you will absorb him and his mindset and his attitudes into you. Yeah. That's super smart. And there's a lot of great podcasts. There really are. Yeah. There's some really good content out there.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, even like, Jimmy Rex, the reason why we're in this rookery studios.
Rookery.
I've never messed that word up live before. But like, I know Jimmy well. He's a good friend of mine. And it's interesting to hear his podcast and then how people in the world interact with him and then how he interacts with the world. Like, it's very interesting to sit back and watch it. I'm also in his men's group, right?
Yeah.
I'm in the men's group. I'm in the second leadership group. And so it's fun to like see him kind of in his element, but then sometimes it's like a lot, but then it's like, then he has this podcast, like it's this whole, cause he's created himself as an influencer, I guess is the best way to put it. Right. Yeah. And, it's just, it's interesting to see how it all kind of jives together, and he's just like us when he started. He was just like, I just was very intentional with starting a podcast. I wanted to grow my social credit and it's kind of how it rolls.
Right. Yeah. Well, and like, do you learn more from hearing people talk and teach, or do you learn more from teaching? Learn more from teaching, right?
Yeah.
At least I do. Like,
probably.
Like when I have to teach something, first I have to know the information. I have to like go over it, and then I have to actually teach it. And I feel like I learned a lot more from actually teaching it.
Yeah. Through that process. Yeah. I guess.
Right. Yeah. And so it's the same thing with podcasting, is I learn a lot from listening. When I actually sit down and have these conversations, these like high quality conversations, I absorb and learn so much from it, from actually being like actually participating in it. I think that's another thing that can hugely impact someone on their journey to, success or, becoming a smart person, is by starting a podcast and just talk to people, pick their brain. You'll learn a lot just from like having intentional conversations with people.
Yeah. And one thing that's nice about the podcast is, you can invite people on your podcast that you've never met before. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like a way for you to connect with them. Right. Which is exactly what we did.
Exactly.
And it's like, yeah. And it's kind of fun too. Like, like on your podcast, it'd be cool to come on it and like chat and talk about whatever. And and see what's going on.
Yeah. Earlier you kind of nailed exactly what it's going to be about. Cause like you were talking about how you go to somebody and you'll ask them, okay, what did they do that hurt them in business? What were the 5 things they would go back and change? And what were the 5 things they would focus on? That's exactly what it's evolving into now.
Yeah.
And once I do the whole change, it's going to be interviewing business owners who have made 10 grand a month and asking them how they did it, how they also chose to do that. Because a lot of people don't really even know what they want to do. But once you choose how to do something or what you want to do, then it's what to avoid and how to get to that. Because a lot of people, that's their biggest jump is 0 to 10 grand. Once you can do that, then, when you don't have enough money, it's like being underwater. You can't pay rent or you're barely making rent. You're living month to month. But once you're out of that, it's like you can breathe. You can do so much more once you are a little, have that success in business. And so that's exactly what it's about. So yeah, you're definitely coming on mine once we get it going more.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love to. And it's fun to return the favor too, right? Like it's,
yeah.
And another thing too, is in the podcasting world, in my opinion, which is worth what you paid for it.
Right.
It's good to go on many of them and build an economy, right? Because, like I try really hard to put good content out, my guests, and I'm actually very selective on who I bring on, which is funny, right? Because when I want you on, it seems really easy and it's like, oh yeah, it's really funny, right? But like, there's a lot of people that I'm like, no, you're not coming.
Which you should be, because if you bring on crappy guests, people are going to be like, well, that was a waste of an hour. Exactly. Do I want to listen to the next one he produces? Yeah. So you have to be selective. So that's a very good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such podcasting is such an interesting thing. Like, do you prep before yours?
I do. Yeah. I like to prep, cause I think there's value in not prepping and then there's value in prepping. Cause I think sometimes like when you prep and you go into like the person's life, cause you can go on their social media and scroll all the way to the bottom and find secrets about them and things that no other guest or no other host has asked them before. Yeah. And so you can ask them those questions and say, hey, I noticed you went through this, or you started this at one point, but it failed. Let's talk about that. Why did it fail? So I do like to prep, but not being strict and sticking to those questions or the prep that I do have, because then it can be more free flowing. Yeah. Those are my favorite podcasts, is when it's a conversation. Yeah. So I do prep, but I'm not like sticking to it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think it's also a personality thing too, right? Like you as the host, right? You've got to be very comfortable in that podcast. Right. So it was interesting for me. So my very first podcast was an athlete. You won't know him.
Nope, probably not.
He's my friend, Paul Kruger. He's a business partner of mine in my investment fund. And, he won a Super Bowl with the Baltimore Ravens, right? He played at the University of Utah. He's a football player.
I may have seen that episode.
Oh, you might have. Yeah.
I may have.
He's an awesome dude. Super great guy. We have investments in all sorts of things now. We're in this restaurant chain that he bought and called By the Bucket. It's like a spaghetti, fast casual kind of thing. But it's fun, right? Like I remember bringing him in and sitting him down. And we're in the studio right now, right? We're in the one next to here, right? But we got the lights on us. We got the cameras right in our face, right? Right. And we're doing the sound check and stuff. And dude, it was like the first time I had got like legitimately nervous in a long time. Right. Mm-hmm. And I had decided that I'm going to do little to no prep for almost every guest. Right. The reason why is because I want the authentic me is discovering the other person. And so if I'm just asking you about your life, like, oh, where'd you grow up at? Where'd you do this? Why are you doing a podcast? Like my follow-up questions are just very, very natural. And it kind of pulls me out of the studio mentally. Right. Where I'm just like, oh yeah. So, and then it does feel like a conversation. And I feel like sometimes with me, I kind of get in a vein where like a lot of people want to ask those questions, right? It's like, well, why did you do this? Why were you homeschooled? Like, what were your parents up to? Were they religious? Were they not religious? You know what I mean? Like, so it's just easy for me to kind of jump into that world. But I remember like when I first started going with Paul, and I know him really well. That's why it was so funny is I'm like so nervous. I'm like, I get like 2 or 3 questions in and I'm like, oh shit, I should have prepped this. Right.
Like, that's the worst because your mind just goes blank and you're like, we're recording right now.
Am I going to run out of space? How long is this going to go for? I mean, I had no idea how long we'd record. I mean, I did not prep. Did not. Right. But then I love football. Right. So then we just started talking about football and he loves football too. Right. And he had this amazing experience. And I'm like, one of the questions I wanted to ask him, and it just popped in my head. I was like, dude, what did it feel like actually playing in the Super Bowl? Like, what was the day before like? Right? He'd answer the question. And I'm like, yeah, but wasn't it weird? Like, it's like a different game though. Because NFL guys are worshipped, right?
Right.
You know, when they're playing, 17 or 18 games in the regular season, I think 17. And they, they're like, their butts are kissed everywhere. Like, everywhere they go is free this, free food. And, everyone's like, oh, the players, they come run out of the tunnel, the whole freaking thing. I'm like, how much different was the Super Bowl? And he's just like, night and day, bro. Like, you're there, and like the whole season, every practice, every team meeting, every film, it's like, we have one goal, gentlemen, and that is to win the Super Bowl. We have nothing less than that will be acceptable. And he's like, then you're in the damn game and you're thinking like, all right, we got to do this, right? Like, we got to freaking win this game. We're here. Like, it's right now, we are live. And it like, the energy that kind of just came from like that exchange just cemented into me. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to prep.
Yeah.
Like this feels so natural and fun having this conversation. I feel excited, and I've had a lot of feedback on that, because I was, promoting it to everybody. I was like texting it to every freaking number in my phone. Nice. I was trying to like get people to listen, to kind of support me off the bat. And like a lot of people are like, and a lot of people love football, so it's really easy to like it. Paul's a very likable guy, right? Mm-hmm. So they're like, oh, that was so much fun, man. It's like, yeah, dude, you ask good questions. And I'm like, yeah, and like, I'm just like, I guess I do, but like, you never really know till you're just like in the freaking moment, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's, I think that works for a lot of people. I think if someone's podcasting, I think it's always a good idea to do some prep, but keep it free flowing as much as you can. Cause I think it's, you got to do what works. Cause like, I think results are what say whether something's working or not. And I think based off your results with the podcast and the download numbers, it's working. If you were only getting a couple hundred downloads, I'd say, okay, you should probably do some more prep, but that's not what's happening. Yeah. So I think people are really responding well to it, obviously. And yeah, I mean, the free flow, I think that's what people like, because then it actually feels like you're in conversation instead of listening to a scripted, like it's almost like a salesperson in a way. Like, when you listen to a sales call and they're reading off a script, nothing wants you to hang up the phone more, right?
Kill me now, yeah.
And that's, I think sometimes what podcasts are, if you can tell it's scripted, everyone's going to turn it off.
Yeah.
So
I also think you can't ask hard questions if it's scripted.
Yeah.
Because when that question comes up, it's jolting to the other person, especially if they don't want to talk about it.
Right.
Where if you get in a conversation with someone, right, say, I don't know, so you beat your wife and you went to jail for 3 years, right? I'm like, you were married once, right? You're like, yeah, I was married. It didn't really turn out that well. And it's like, well, what happened? Like people are more like, oh, instead of being like, in 1999, you beat your wife, you know what I'm saying? It's like,
right.
And the other guy's like, yes, I did. It's like public knowledge, kind of thing, right? It just creates this weird, like, I don't know, jolty moment instead of like, well, where was your head at with that? What happened, man? Like, well, it's something I regret totally, and it kind of goes in and like humanizes the conversation. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, I like to tell people before I be on their podcast, just like, you know who Sean Whalen is? Mm-hmm. So one thing I've learned from him that I don't think I've really learned too much from anyone else is just being completely real and authentic. And I've really taken that in and, talking about the hard things. And so every podcast I'm a guest on, I tell them nothing's off limits. Here's all the crap I've done. Here's everything I've, been through. I mean, as much as you can put in, right? Yeah. You don't want to overwhelm no one, but, it's the realness of the conversation going in deep that actually, keeps the listener there and feels like they're part of it. Cause when it's just a normal conversation that you hear every day in the street or at lunch or at the family party, like most people tune out to those. And so it's when people like drama, right? Yeah. And so when they hear about the hard things, that's what really, one, they get to learn from, because you're talking about real stuff, but then two, like it's actually something that they can relate to, and it's valuable, right?
Right.
So
let me ask you this. How did you hear about my podcast?
I heard about yours through, so Jimmy Rex. I know Jimmy Rex. Well, I haven't talked to him in years, but so I met Jimmy Rex 15 years ago for everyone listening. But so I was just doing some searches for like shows Jimmy Rex had been on, and yours came on, and so I was like, you know what? I'm going to email Mark and see if I can come on his show. Looks like he's got something good going on here. It'd be fun to be on and have a conversation. So that's how I heard about it.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
So have you listened to a lot of the episodes?
Not a lot of them. I listened to one of your more recent ones. I don't remember what his name was, but is the guy who he like his parents like left him, or his parents were getting a divorce, and he was like always trying to get back to his mom.
Yeah, Greg Brown.
Yeah. Listen to that. That was a very deep conversation, and I was like very much in it.
Yeah.
So I haven't listened to too many, but I've listened to a handful of them.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
They're good. I like them.
Yeah, that podcast was interesting. I know I've recently met Greg. He's a great dude.
Yeah.
He's actually very soft and very competent guy, right?
He came across that way.
Yeah, he's good to talk to. I had no idea about any of that. Wow. So when he started talking about that, I was like, wow. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, right? But I'm like, that happened to you?
Yeah,
like,
holy crap.
He's like, yeah. And, you know, for the people listening that haven't heard the episode, I mean, he basically was taken from his parents at 7. What did he say? Didn't he say 56? What do they call those things? Homes he was in, right?
Oh yeah. He was in a lot foster homes.
Foster homes. Yeah. Thank you. He was in 56 foster homes up until like 17, where they finally were just like, we're done with you. Right.
Yeah.
And then he rolled back to his mom. He was always trying to get back to his mom. He always felt like he was being ripped away from his mom. Mom didn't want him around. And so now he's like, I mean, the mindset behind that, I wish we should have dove into it a little bit more, because he's successful now. He lives a great life. He's good to people. You know what I'm saying? Right.
Yeah.
He's a guy that could easily have been, you know, in prison the rest of his life for doing really dumb shit, because, but he literally chose himself. He chose to live a good life. And it was amazing how much admiration I had for him, like in the moment, you know what I mean? And then after, you know, I've been talking to him all the time, but it's like, I just can't believe you went through that. Like, you're such a, like, you know, I'm almost waiting for him to like pull his shirt off and have like, you know, freaking dragon tattoo across, you know, stabbing 2 people in the face or something. You know what I mean? Like, what's inside you, man? Like, where's the anger? You know, like you got gypped. Your childhood got ripped and away from you, and it's unfair, you know? Yeah. But he just kind of pounds through it, and he helps businesses make money, and he raises money for certain businesses and invests, and he's a good consultant, and he's great. Yeah. He's a good dude.
And that just goes to show it's all about how you handle the situation. It's not necessarily what happens to you. Like, I love hearing stories like that, because you have no excuse after that. Yeah. Like, worse things have happened to other people, and they've still come out on top. Yeah.
So what drew you to that episode?
You know, I think it was just one of the recent ones. So I was like, you know what? Yeah, just right before coming on this one, I was like, you know, I want to get, you know, kind of refresh on how like the flow and everything. And so that's what made me listen to it. But I was very much in it when I was listening to it.
Oh, cool.
So
yeah, there's some I've had some interesting guests on. Go listen to one that people love is the one with a guy named Thurkel.
Okay.
He just left polygamy in 2017. He's in my men's group. They took his kids away from him. He ended up getting his kids back. His sister was married to Warren Jeffs. I mean, his story is crazy, right? And so being here in the state of Utah, where, you know, there's a bunch of states that have polygamy, obviously, right? But like, technically, he lived in Arizona. You know, he lived down in, what's that place called? Colorado City. Colorado City. But just hearing him, I mean, he literally just took his family, put them in a truck, drove away, didn't have a dollar to his name.
Wow. It was just done with it.
Yeah. 7 kids, him and his wife. And it took him a while. It was hard, you know, but you listen to these stories, man, you're just like, wow, like, I can't believe you went through that. Yeah. You know, and then when you hear those stories too, like, it takes a lot of courage, you know, people throw courage around like everyone's got a little bit of it. And it's like, nah, dude, there's some real courageous things that people do. You know, I mean, it'd be like you, right? Just like one day, just resetting your whole life and moving to Iceland. Right. You know what I mean? You just show up and you're like, I have nothing. I know no one. I have no resources. You know what I mean? You're just there, no home. And he just kind of overcame it. It was awesome. It was awesome to hear that. And the funny thing too, is like, I didn't bring him on to talk about that. I brought him on to talk about business, actually, like kind of, cause he's a contractor, you know, and like, you know, builds houses, you know, and then he's a realtor and like all this kind of stuff. Right. And he's in my men's group, and I mean, I knew his background a little bit, right? I knew his story. So we kind of started going into it. Then he just became so wildly entertaining or interesting to me that we just dove as deep. And he was just like, I'll tell you anything you want, man. I'm just like, okay, you know, like, let's go, dude. What the heck?
So do you usually probe people when you're having a conversation with them to see like what they want to talk about, or, you know, trying to get into things, or do you kind of let them just talk about what they want to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, to be honest, I mean, I shouldn't say I do no prep. I mean, I know the person's coming in, right? Like, I had you send me a bio so I can kind of understand you a little bit.
Right.
But, the people that I know intimately for a long time, we start talking about their stuff.
Right.
Like another guy that I had on, his name is Blair Buswell. He's one of the first guys that I thought I got to have this dude on my podcast. Like, he's amazing. He's like a modern day Michelangelo. Right.
Okay.
He does all the busts for the Football Pro Hall of Fame. He's been working on a project for either 22 or 24 years, and he still has 2 more years left on it. It's in downtown Oklahoma, or is it Norman, Omaha? It's this massive art. He's a sculptor. He's this massive art installation, dude. But he's done he's done all sorts of stuff. He's been on almost every NFL Hall of Famer knows him personally, because he takes their measurements and makes a bust of them. And he's done the majority of the busts in the Hall of Fame. And I think he's I don't know his title. He said it in the podcast, but it's either art director or creative director for the Football Hall of Fame. Right. It's amazing. He's amazing. And he works I think he lives in Alpine now. I grew up with him when he lived in Highland, and his studio is just down in Pleasant Grove. It's unassuming, but you went in there and it's like Willy Wonka's factory, dude. It's what the hell? Like you look at this wagon train that he's done in Oklahoma, right? It's unbelievable. It's 1 1/4 size, right? So the figurines in there are 7.5 feet. The figurines, but the people,
Yeah.
And then we're talking about it, and he's like, yeah, look at that guy up there. It's the guy that's steering the coach. I'm like, man, he looks familiar. He goes, it's me. I'm like, oh, freak. It is you. And then he's like, his kids and his wife are the other people, right? They're immortal now. It's all bronzed out. I mean, I don't even know what the freak they paid for this stuff, in this place. A bank paid for it. It's 4 city blocks. Yeah. It's called Coming West, I think, or Making Our Way West or something like that. It's got Indians and all these stagecoaches and these oxen, and dude, it's unbelievable what he does. But can you imagine interviewing Michelangelo or Leonardo da Vinci? You know what I'm saying, right?
Uh-huh.
These guys that are the artistic creation inside them are second to none, And I one of the questions I asked him was, I was like, dude, what's your legacy like? I mean, people want a legacy, right? You have a legacy. The amount of stuff he's done is just unbelievable.
Right.
They're outside of stadiums. He's done Mickey Mantle. He did O.J. Simpson. He did John Woodson. John Woodson was a UCLA basketball coach for a long time, right? He's dead, I think. Yeah. And so, in fact, he's dead. There's this massive statue outside of that stadium. It will never go away. Yeah. Ever. Right? In 300 years from now, unless the earth is destroyed, that will stand. All the stuff he does is like that. It's immortal. Right. And it's so crazy interesting just talking to him, right? And that's the thing. That's why I don't want to come up with a bunch of questions for guys like him, because I just want him to talk and just talk about his feelings, And one thing I thought was really interesting is he works by himself, right? Yeah. And I'm like, so what's it like being in the studio? And he's just like, I love being in the studio. Sometimes he watches TV, sometimes he listens to music, sometimes it's dead silent, and he's just using his hands, and he's using clay and creating these. It's bananas, dude. Yeah. It is. And I show it to people, and if they don't understand how creative he is, it angers me. Because right. I'm like, you don't get it. This guy's building the freaking, Sistine Chapel. It's just in statues. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. And when he actually turned down that job in Oklahoma, and they came back to him and like, nah, dude, you're the best. He won't say it that way, right? Yeah. When you listen to the podcast, he says it very humbly, but they're like, no, you're the best in the world at this. We want you to do this, Right. And he's like, well, I recommended a couple other guys, and there's a couple of guys that helped me do it, And I'm like, yeah, helped you do it. You're the one, right? And he probably doesn't even see it that way, to be honest, but when you get around him, you're like, oh, this dude, man, it's amazing.
He sounds really down to earth and just
super down to earth. If you met him, you had no idea. Then you go into a studio and you're like, holy cow. He has one of the stagecoaches in there, right? The thing wouldn't even fit in this room. Right. It's cool.
That's so cool. Those are my favorite people, is when you meet them, they're just, one, very authentic, real, but you never know the level of success or ability they have just by the way they carry themselves. Cause they don't see themselves or treat you different than them, or, they're just very, very real. I had a cousin where, cause I started a business, back when I was 18, and I still run it now, but I'm transitioning over to just running my own podcast and helping other people with theirs. But it was a home maintenance business. So window cleaning, screen repair, stuff like that. And my cousin, he was like, come out to my place in Tooele. I live in South Jordan. He's come out to my place and do everything. And I was like, my cousin is the guy that's like, he's successful. Like he's doing okay, but I didn't think he was like really had enough money to, cause it's a luxury service getting your windows cleaned. Right. Yeah. And so I go out there and he's just a very humble, real guy. Just things are the way they are. And he apparently was doing like $100,000 a month doing his thing. And I had no idea. And you never know based off the home he lives in, the cars he drives, the way he carries himself, the clothes he wears. He's just extremely real. And you never know that he was being like, had this level of financial success. And honestly, in every other area of life too. Yeah. Just a very humble, real guy. And that just makes me like those people even more, just because you never know, because they don't see you as any different than them. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
no, it's fun to get to know them. Right. And these guys, if they don't come on podcasts, people won't know who they are.
Yeah.
Like the one thing with Blair, the artist is, he was, I don't want to say he was unwilling to come on, because he obviously came on, and he's a family friend. I've known him for a long time, but he's not a media guy. He's not a look at me kind of guy.
Yeah.
At all. And I don't know, man, maybe I'm the bull in the china shop where I'm just like, we should be celebrating the hell out of you.
Yeah.
I mean, he has been on, he goes like every Super Bowl, they like bend over backwards for him. Right. And because he's that good, but he's also just a guy you like too. Like he's funny. He's got humor, and he's a good dude. He's lived a great life. He loves his wife, loves his kids, just, Right. But he also has this whole side of him where it's just like, I'm in this studio and I just build and create. And like, I don't know if he has agenda every day, or we didn't really get into that, but it's just like this whole world that's kind of crazy. Another guy I had on was named Al Switzler. And he wrote the book Crucial Conversations with some other guys.
Oh man, I met him.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Tall guy, right? Yeah.
Yeah. He came in and taught with the group I was in, and he couldn't get his laptop working, so I actually helped him out with that.
Oh, really?
But yeah. Anyway, I haven't read the book. I've listened to podcasts where they talk about the book and all that. It's on my list, but anyway,
it's a book I read in college. Here's the funny thing: I read the book before I knew he wrote it.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I grew up with him. It was just, like freaking great guy, our brother Switzler, right?
Yeah.
And he wrote it he is a collaboration book, and then they built this entire consulting business around it. Mm-hmm. Their first client was like Ford, dude. Like this isn't like,
yeah.
People are like, oh yeah, he was a consultant. I'm like, no, he was like the consultant. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even know how many Fortune 50 companies he worked with. I mean, like, he was a adjunct professor at Michigan and at USC, at BYU. I mean, he started out as a professor, right? Mm-hmm. And he's funny too, because he started working on his doctorate and then got into business basically, right?
Right.
And I'm like, and I always like, yeah, your PhD. And he's like, well, I started the work. I didn't actually finish it. And I'm like, oh, Al, like, dude, you are so qualified to speak on all this stuff, and like, and even in church, back when I was a kid, he was just awesome. He's great to deal with. He's super witty. His childhood was hard. It was super hard. Mm. And he's just one of those guys that's just like super smart.
Yeah.
Like it's just in him, and yeah, I loved having him on. And, we actually disagreed on something for a minute, not like a hardcore disagreement, but the way I saw it, he had a different version of it. And we kind of debated it a little bit. Right. And it was fun, man. And it's like, man, this is so much fun, like talking to you, because you're just I think he's 75, 76. Right. And he's lived a whole life. He's lived a life at a super high level, and having those guys, like those are actually the guys I wanted to target on my podcast to begin with. I wanted to get all these guys, and I hate saying that they're older, right? But they are, you know, the guys that have been kind of retired, and like, I wanted to get their wealth of knowledge digitalized in my world forever, right? Because they're, you know, like at your age, right? You're 27, right?
Right.
I don't know if you would naturally look at a guy in his 70s and go, oh, dude, the business knowledge that he has, I need to implement it, because I think the perspective that you're taught, and I don't want to speak for you, right? But it's like, well, they're old dudes. Like we do it a new way. And it's like, no, the principles that those guys know is the exact same now. Sure, you might do it on your iPhone, but like the connection with people, how groupthink works, how organizations run, and like the heartbeat of everything, right? Not the brain of it, right? Because that's all technology, but the heartbeat of businesses, and how you like Crucial Conversations, right? Is about the conversations that you have amongst employees in your life, with your children, with your spouse. You know what I mean? It's all of that stuff. It's like the blood and the circularity of how businesses really run. And when you get to a certain level, like how do you keep it all together, right? How do you keep managers and mid-level managers and employees and keep them happy and keep them motivated, incentivized, and like, it's all that stuff.
Right.
He's just like the king of it. And so, and he's another guy that's crazy humble, and he'd be like, well, me and my partners. And I'm like,
it's
okay,
you.
Yeah. Yeah, whatever, Al. Yeah.
Right. No.
I want to hear what you think, because you're the guy, you know. And they would, and don't get me wrong, his partners were brilliant too, I'm sure. I've never met them, right? But I mean, and I'm sure it was a groupthink thing, and they did it all together, and they all took equal shares of the company. And, you know, he's very clear on saying that, right? And that, because that was his agreement with them, right? It's like, we're going to do this together. We're not going to make any one of us the rock star. And then that guy just goes around and speaks, and we all make money. And like, he goes, we're going to do it all together. We're going to let our work speak for it. Right. That's what we are doing. And I think that's super admirable. I also think that's the business principles that he teaches too. Right. Like any business you create, the product needs to speak for itself, not the guy that runs the company. Oh, I love dealing with Bob over at BC Plumbing, right? Mm-hmm. Well, as soon as Bob's gone, BC Plumbing goes away. Right. Because it was Bob. They liked Bob. They didn't like that BC Plumbing was on time, was on budget, you know what I mean? All that kind of stuff. And so that's, I don't know. Yeah. No, tangent, but you know what I'm saying, right? Yeah.
No, because that's what you said is exactly what went through my mind. Is like, if I were to go to, you know, someone who's in their 70s, 80s, and ask them about business advice, I mean, I would think like, oh yeah, we do it different now. The world's changed, but I agree. There are those core principles that don't change and never will change, because people, whether like, even though their interests change, the core on how our brains work and what we care about kind of stays, you know, the same.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's another thing that I think is really cool about podcasting, is you can have those conversations with those people that wouldn't normally share their knowledge, because they have such a wealth of knowledge, you know, in their brains, but they, you know, are humble. So they don't feel the need to like say, hey, look at me, but then you can get them on here. Yeah. Plus another thing with it is like, the more hands you shake, the more money you make. Right. And so that's another.
I've never heard that one. That's good.
You haven't heard that one? Really? No. What? Okay.
Yeah, I must be old.
Yeah, must be super old. The more hands you shake, the more money you make.
Yeah.
And I've also heard that's the thing about college too, is I heard this on another podcast, but he's like, the point of college isn't necessarily for the degree, it's to like, it's about the hands you shake, not the, oh, I can't even remember it now. But anyways, I don't even repeat that one, but it's the more hands you shake, the more money you make. So you can get those people on your podcast and learn from them, and then create these connections. Because who knows what will happen after this, right? I'll get you on my podcast, and then maybe that'll create something, and maybe I'll say, hey, I need you to come speak at this thing, or come help me with that.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can, it's all about who you know. It's not always what you know.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Although that is important. You have to know something.
I love that. Well, my friend, we're running up on our time here. Mostly because we talked for 40 minutes before the podcast started.
We did. We had a very, very in-depth conversation.
So I always have my guests give me their best 2 minutes of advice. And that's how we'll end it.
Okay. My best 2 minutes of advice. Choose yourself. I think that's the advice I give to a lot of people, is learn how to do things for yourself. Because a lot of people, they get married, they go to college, they do all these things because it's what society and their parents and maybe their friends have said that's what they're supposed to do. And I think a lot of people really don't want to do that, if at all, or at least maybe not as early as they do. But if that was something that I would have learned a lot earlier, I would have saved myself a whole lot of money, a whole lot of headache, a whole lot of like emotional, I don't know how you say it, just emotional hardship, I guess. And so my advice is to anyone, like, learn how to do things for you because you want to do it, not because anyone is telling you to do it. Because I think that's a big problem. That's when people fall into depression, anxiety, because they're not actually living the life they want to live. They're just living the life they're, quote unquote, supposed to live. And so learn how to do that. How you do that is by getting uncomfortable, doing things you don't want to do, disappointing people that you don't want to disappoint. But, if those people are really the people you want in your life, they're going to love you regardless. And a lot of times choosing yourself, it can hurt other people or at least make them upset. And that's on them. That has nothing to do with you. So that's what it is. Choose yourself.
I love that, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on the podcast, dude. I'm excited to do this.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Mark.
Thanks for listening to the President McCormack Podcast, brought to you by McCormack Foundation, Saxton Fund, ADP Lemco, and Professional Floor Systems. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and keep up with Mark on Instagram @President McCormack.